Hello friends, welcome, namaskar. In this session, we are going to discuss the previous year questions of UPSC prelims and the topic is public finance. So in the chapter of public finance, we have already discussed various concepts. We have discussed about the fiscal policy, about the budget, capital and revenue items, and we have discussed the deficits. We have discussed various terminologies associated with the public finance. Now let us see the important questions which have been asked in the UPSC previous year examinations. So I will give you 30 seconds for each of the question. You should take that time and try to solve the question yourself, and then we will have a discussion about the explanation. So your 30 seconds starts now for this question. So let us see statement 1, assertion A. Fiscal deficit is always greater than budgetary deficit. So budgetary deficit is always 0 and fiscal deficit is basically equal to the budgetary deficit plus the borrowings, and these borrowings can be from RBI and maybe from other places. So this statement is correct. Reason: fiscal deficit is the borrowing from the RBI plus other liabilities of the government to meet its expenditure. This statement is also correct. And in fact, this statement of reason is completely accurate as far as this assertion is concerned. So both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. So answer is option A. Right. Now let us see the next question. Again, your time starts now. (30 seconds). So let us see this question. Match list 1 and list 2 and select the correct answer using the codes given below. This question was asked in 2001. The previous question was asked in 1999. Fiscal deficit, budget deficit, revenue deficit and primary deficit. So let us see each one of the explanation. Excess of total expenditure over the total receipts. This is budget deficit. Excess of revenue expenditure over the revenue receipt. This is revenue deficit. Excess of total expenditure over the total receipts less the borrowing. This is the fiscal deficit. And excess of total expenditure over the total receipt less borrowing and the interest payment. This is the payment primary deficit only. So if we see what is the correct answer, so A is 3 and D is 4, over here B is 1 and C is 2. So answer is option A. I hope you understand and know each one of the item which have been mentioned over here. Next question. Your time starts now. With reference to Indian public finance, consider the following statement, and the question belongs to 2002. External liabilities reported in the union budget are based on historical exchange rate. So external liabilities reported in the union budget, they are not based upon the historical exchange rate, rather they are based upon the exchange rate prevailing on the 31st of March of the particular year. So why is that? Because exchange rate which are available today, that is on the date of the reporting, those exchange rate will be taken. Because if the payment has to be made, that payment will be made in today's rate, not in the earlier rate, right? So to keep this figure to the practical level, the reporting is based upon the latest rate, not upon the historical rate. Statement number 2, continued high borrowing has kept real interest rate high in the economy. So when borrowing is high, the interest rate also remains high, right? So borrowing high means the demand is high, so definitely the cost of money, that is the interest rate, will always be high in that case. So although this is the situational question of 2002, but still if we see the conceptually, still we can drive the answer. The upward trend in the ratio of fiscal deficit of GDP in the recent years has an adverse effect on the private investment. Conceptually also this is correct. The fiscal deficit actually crowds out the private investment. Other than that, there are two more adverse impact of fiscal deficit. It is inflationary in nature, and secondly, it creates a burden on the future generations. Interest payment is the single largest component of the non-planned revenue expenditure of the union government. This is a current affairs question of that time. So the answer of this question is 2, 3 and 4. So at that time the interest payment was the largest as far as the non-planned revenue expenditure is concerned. So this statement 4 will not be asked in the current time because we do not have any classification like non-plan. So plan and non-plan classification was abolished in the year 2017, right? Again your time starts now. Your 30 seconds starts now. In fact, this is a very simple question. I don't think that you need 30 seconds. I will straight away discuss this question. Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act concerns A. Fiscal deficit only, B. Revenue deficit only, both fiscal and revenue deficit. This is the answer. So FRBM Act of 2003, it lays down the target for the central government. So it lays down that between 2003 and 2008-9 the fiscal deficit will be reduced to 3% and revenue deficit will be reduced to 0%. However, in reality this does not happen, and why this did not happen? Because there was a financial crisis going on in the world. Ultimately in 2008 this FRBM Act was amended as per the recommendation of the Encasing Committee, and now we have the new target for 22-23, but those targets will also be missed because of the current global slowdown which has been forced because of the corona based lockdown. Next question, I will give you 30 seconds for this, so take 30 seconds and give the answer. In the context of governance, consider the following. So this question was asked in 2010. Number 1, encouraging FDI. So before reading the statement, let us see what is the question. Which of the above can be used as a measure to control the fiscal deficit? So fiscal deficit is always equal to the amount of borrowing and the other liabilities, right? So how the fiscal deficit can be reduced? Encouraging FDI, this will not have any impact on the fiscal deficit, because this has an impact on the BOP deficit, but this has not been linked to the public finance. This has nothing to do with the public finance. The fiscal deficit is basically do with the government finances. This FDI has nothing to do with the government finances. The money will come from one person and it will come to India and it will be invested somewhere. It has nothing to do with the government finances. Privatization of higher educational institution. This has also nothing to do with the fiscal deficit, because privatization has nothing to do with how much expenditure will be incurred from the side of government. Downsizing of bureaucracy. Yes, if the bureaucracy is reduced, if the number of people in the government has reduced, that means the salary expenditure will reduce. If the salary expenditure is reduced, that means the revenue expenditure will is reduced. If the revenue expenditure is reduced, definitely the fiscal deficit will come down. So this statement is correct. Statement number 4, selling or offloading the shares of public sector undertaking. That means increase in the capital receipt. So if the capital receipts are increased, then also fiscal deficit can be reduced, right? So fiscal deficit can be reduced when either the expenditure goes down or the receipt comes up, right? So in the statement number 3, the expenditure is coming down. In the statement number 4, the expenditure is the receipts are increasing. So in this case, the answer will be option D, statement 3 and 4. Next question, this is very easy question. In India, deficit financing is used for raising the resources. 4. So this question was asked in 2003. So you take 5 seconds and then we will discuss. So in this question, let us discuss each option. In India, deficit financing is used for raising resources. So deficit financing means the government is borrowing the resources, and that means there is a high expenditure and less revenue. A, economic development. So yeah, economic development के लिए ऐसा हो सकता है, because whenever there is recession, that means economic growth rate is reducing, then the government goes for the fiscal stimulus. Fiscal stimulus means the government increases the expenditure and reduces the tax rates. So in such cases, there will be requirement of basically deficit financing, and because of this deficit financing, the economic growth rate can increase, right? So when the government will infuse the money into the market, there will be creation of demand, and that will increase the production also. So the economic development will rise. So in India, deficit financing is used for raising the resources for economic development. This is correct. Statement number 2, redemption of public debt. So deficit financing is basically raising the money for utilizing it for some expenditure, not for taking the public debt, for redeeming the public debt. Adjusting the balance of payment, it has nothing to do with that, and reducing the foreign debt, it also has nothing to do with that. So answer is option A, economic development. So here you can relate with the situation of fiscal stimulus, which I have already discussed in your syllabus. Again, this is a very good question and you should take 30 seconds to answer this. In fact, this question is outdated, because this question is asking about the non-plan expenditure, which has been abolished. This plan non-plan distinction has been abolished in 2017, because this was very illogical, right? But still the answer to this question will be 1, 2, 3 and 4. I will not discuss this question because this question is irrelevant in the present context. But can I ask you, defense expenditure is revenue or capital? This is revenue. Unless something is said, it will be considered as the revenue. If something is said, for example, if the question says the road has been constructed on the border, so that will be part of the capital expenditure, because in that we have created the asset. So if the expenditure is impacting the asset or liability, then it is a capital expenditure. Subsidies, it is part of the revenue expenditure clearly. And do you remember top three subsidies as per the latest economic survey. The top three subsidies are highest. Number one is food subsidy. Number two, fertilizer subsidy. And number three, fuel subsidy. All expenditures linked with the previous year plan period. So expenditure of previous year plan, they are basically, as of now, we divide either into the revenue or capital. So if the nature is that it does not impact the asset and liability, then it is revenue, otherwise it is capital. Interest payment, it is purely revenue expenditure, right? Can I ask one more item from you just to check your understanding? There is one more item, repayment of loan. So interest payment is revenue, but if the government makes repayment of some loan which it has taken earlier, that is capital item. So please be sure. And can I ask one more question from you? Interest versus grant. Sorry, the loan versus grant. Loan is a capital item and grant is a revenue item. Loan affects the capital asset or capital liability, and grant does not affect the capital asset and capital liability. Next question is also very easy. Economic Survey of India is published officially by whom? Very easy question. Ministry of Finance. And in the Ministry of Finance, under the leadership of Chief Economic Advisor, it is prepared. And my question is Economic Survey a constitutional document? The answer is no. It is presented by convention by the Ministry of Finance in the both houses of Parliament. And do you know the date? It is presented one day before the presentation of the annual financial statement. So these days this is presented on 31st of January every year for the past 12 months. Next question, which one of the following is responsible for preparation and presentation of the union budget to the Parliament? Do you know the answer? So there are basically 4 departments of the Ministry of Finance. So which department? The answer is Department of Economic Affairs. And do you know about all the 4 departments? The first department is Department of Revenue, which talks about the tax revenues and non-tax revenues, especially these CBDT, Central Board of Direct Taxes, and CBIC, Central Board of Indirect Taxes. That is part of the this Department of Revenue. Department of Economic Affairs, it is responsible for budget preparation. Department of Financial Services, it takes care of the banking sector and the other financial institutions. Department of Expenditure, it takes care of the expenditure side. And there is one more department which deals with the disinvestment. Consider the following actions by the government. So here you take 30 seconds and then we will start, because this is a good conceptual question. You should take your time and then we will discuss. Consider the following actions by the government. Question of 2010. Which of the above actions can be considered as part of the fiscal stimulus package? So fiscal stimulus is used in case of recession or slowdown. So when there is poor economic growth rate, then to boost the economic growth rate, the government uses the fiscal stimulus. As part of the fiscal stimulus, either the expenditure is increased or the receipt is decreased, especially the tax rates, right? So tax rates are decreased. When the tax rates are decreased, people have more money to spend. If they have more money to spend, they can generate the demand for the industry and the production can increase. The government also increases the expenditure. It can increase the expenditure by giving the more subsidy. That will create the demand in the market, or by creating infrastructure, by spending on the infrastructure, so that it can generate the jobs and it can also generate the demand for the industry. So expenditure is increased and receipts are decreased. Now let us see first statement, cutting the tax rate. So this is automatically part of the fiscal stimulus. Increasing the government spending. Yes. Abolishing the subsidies. This is wrong. So subsidies can be increased, cannot be abolished as part of the fiscal stimulus package. My question is, in India, when did this fiscal stimulus package has been used? The answer is, it was used in 2008-9, primarily because of the global recession which happened because of the subprime crisis of the USA. And in the recent time also, we are using this especially during this corona lockdown situation. So answer here is statement 1 and 2, option A. Next question, this is also comparatively easy question, but language is little bit longer, therefore you should take 30 seconds and solve this question carefully. Which one of the following statements appropriately describe the fiscal stimulus? Again, the question is on the fiscal stimulus. This fiscal stimulus question came in 2010 and 11 again. Why? Because at that time, India was under the global recession. So, it required the fiscal stimulus. Government gave various fiscal stimulus packages. Again, this question is becoming important in the recent time because of the fiscal stimulus being given by the government for the purpose of managing this corona lockdown situation. So here let us understand each statement. Statement 1, it is a massive investment by the government in manufacturing sector. So it is not limited to the manufacturing sector. Therefore this is not the answer. It is an intense affirmative action of the government to boost economic activity in the country. Yes, this can be one of the answer. It is government's intensive action on financial institutions to ensure disbursement of loans to agriculture and allied sector to promote greater food production and contain food inflation. This is also very, very limited phenomena. It is an extreme affirmative action to pursue its policy of financial inclusion. Again, this is very, very limited. So friends, you should read all the statement whenever you are solving the question. जब भी आप क्वेश्चन सोल्व कर रहे हैं, आप सारे स्टेटमेंट को पढ़ेंगे. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप एक ही स्टेटमेंट को पढ़ रहे हैं, दो स्टेटमेंट बाकी स्टेटमेंट को छोड़ रहे हैं. ये चारों स्टेटमेंट बहुत ही क्लोजली आपकी एसोसिएटेड है विद द फिस्कल स्टिमुलस, राइट. लेकिन सबसे ज्यादा जो आपका क्लोज है वो है ऑप्शन बी. अगर आपका इन चारों ऑप्शन में से कोई भी ऑप्शन रखा जाए और 3 और ऑप्शन हो जिसका आंसर आपको पता ही नहीं है, यानी कि बहुत एक बैंकिंग सेक्टर से उठा के रख दिया, एक एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर से उठा के रख दिया, एक इन्फ्लेशन से उठा के रख दिया, वो एकदम अनरिलेटेड स्टेटमेंट है फिस्कल स्टिमुलस से. इन दैट केस इनमें से कोई भी स्टेटमेंट कहीं ना कहीं फिट हो सकता है. तो बेसिकली इन चारों स्टेटमेंटों में से स्टेटमेंट नंबर बी इज मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट, is the right answer, but there is a possibility that in some questions you might not find the exact right answer, but in that case you have to look for the very close option. Next question. So take 30 seconds. Again, this is a good question. There has been a persistent deficit budget year after year. Which of the following actions can be taken by the government to reduce the deficit? So answer is how to reduce the deficit. So if the government wants to reduce the deficit, then there can be two ways. Either we reduce the expenditure or we increase the receipts, right? So we will analyze each option whether they are falling under any of these two categories or not. If not, then that is the not correct answer. Reducing revenue expenditure, yes. So statement 1 is the correct statement. Introducing new welfare schemes, no, because this will increase the expenditure, not reduce the expenditure. Rationalizing subsidies, yes. Rationalization means eliminating unnecessary subsidies, targeted use of the subsidies. Yes, this is a correct. Expanding industries, this has nothing to do with the fiscal deficit. So answer is option 1 and 3, that is option A. Next question. This is a question which is actually taken from the economic survey, right? So this is a trendy question. You have to answer this question based upon the latest data. But if we actually see this 2017, in fact, even if if the same question you get now also, the answer will remain same. So what is the question? First read this question and just consider the latest data from the latest economic survey and answer this question based upon that. This is very good example of which type of question are asked from the economic survey. So you should actually understand that this type of questions are asked from the economic survey. Tax revenue as a percentage of GDP of India has steadily increased in the last decade. Tax revenue GDP as a percentage of GDP has steadily increased as per the economic survey. This is incorrect. So there has been ups and downs year and because of different situations. Fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP of India has steadily increased. No, there has been ups and downs. Sometimes it was reducing, sometimes it was increasing. So there have been ups and downs. The situation has not been basically consistent. So in this case, both are incorrect. So answer is option D. With this, the discussion of the previous questions is complete. Thank you very much. God bless you.